Founders are constantly having to negotiate. It's one of your core roles as CEO. And you're going to be negotiating with all kinds of different people. Certainly, you're going to be negotiating with investors like me. You'll be negotiating with vendors, with customers, with employees, potential employees, co-founders. You're always trying to work out some kind of an opportunity with someone. And many of us are not particularly good at this. A lot of founders like me are fairly conflict averse. We don't like to get into fights and arguments. We may not have a lot of skill in this to begin with. We may not have a lot of experience in negotiating. So today I want to cover some tips and techniques for becoming a more effective negotiator and getting from a conflict situation to a win-win where everyone's excited to be doing business. Welcome to Feel the Boot, the science of startups. I'm your host, Lance Cottrell, and I'm here to help you navigate that vertical learning curve you are going to encounter when you're launching your business. I know what it's like. I have been there myself, and I've helped countless other founders along their journeys. Now, this episode is part of our series on building and running your business. You can find all the other videos up at the card there and down in the description. You can also get everything that I do, both as a video, also as a podcast, or as a blog. So whether you need to get information on the run, while you're on your commute, you prefer to learn by reading, all those options are available to you, and you can get them all at feeltheboot.com. I often worry that when I'm in a negotiation, I'm actually going to do damage to the relationships that I'm trying to build with my vendors or whoever it is that I'm negotiating with. All I want to do is get through that process and on to the result so we can start doing business together or accomplishing whatever goal we happen to share. But there's a number of tips and techniques that can allow you to avoid turning this into a situation where you're just butting heads with people and end up with a result that leaves everyone happy to be moving forward. There are a huge number of things you might end up finding yourself negotiating about. We've talked about a few of those. Employees, that can be options and salary, as well as job description and job title. Equity splits with co-founders, working with investors. Often this comes down to working with vendors or customers. You're trying to work on setting price and negotiating terms. When do you need to pay? When do they need to pay? Can you defer that payment? Can you get discounts? Can you get them to knock off certain one-time startup costs, tooling costs, implementation costs, right? You're going to be talking about those all the time. Sometimes they can be somewhat fraught negotiations. When your company's over a barrel, maybe you're negotiating with vendors about deferring payments way down the line or radically restructuring what you owe them. These are fairly heated issues, but with the right techniques, they can be handled in a really effective way. If you want to explore this issue of negotiation in more depth than I can go into in a video like this, there's two books that I highly encourage you to check out. The first is Never Split the Difference, and the other is Negotiate Anything. Both great books, and I'll put links down in the description. Now, before you even start to negotiate with someone, you need to start by looking inwards and thinking about your own needs and priorities. What are your desired outcomes for this negotiation? Why are you going into this? What are the priorities in terms of what you want to get out of it? And what are your bright lines? Where are those points beyond which you won't go? If you cannot get at least this kind of term, you're just going to walk away. And that comes down to what's often called a BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Because you can always just do what you've been doing, which is living without this person. That's always an option. You can go there when you hit this kind of number. The other thing to be thinking about is what sorts of things don't you care about so much? Right? If you're talking about, for example, negotiating with someone on salary, you only have so many dollars, or you've got a rigid salary structure that you need to stay within. But maybe you can negotiate on days working from home, or vacation days, or flexible work hours, or fancy titles, whatever it is that might make someone else excited about the job. Think through all the kinds of levers that you have available to you. There's often a lot more than you would immediately think of when you sit down to negotiate. Then, when you do sit down with this other person, don't immediately start haggling. The next thing you want to be doing is listen. Ask leading questions. It's going to be a very Socratic process because you want to understand all of the same things about them and their priorities and interests and hard lines that you do about yourself, without making any judgments about it at this point, and without trying to negotiate anything. Really spend some time exploring all of those questions, because that then becomes the basis for actually doing those negotiations going forward. Now, I want to interrupt this episode really briefly, and I'm sure you know why. The first reason is I want you to like, subscribe, and ring that bell to make sure that you get notified every time new episodes of Feel the Boot come out, and it makes sure that the algorithm will show you more content like this that will help you build your startup. If you really want to make sure you're getting all the alerts, sign up for my newsletter, Bootprints. It also gives you access to my free office hours. I have office hours every week, and a link in that newsletter will give you the ability to sign up and talk to me about any issues that I don't address in one of these episodes, or some issue that is specific to your individual business situation. Now, if you need faster help or more time to talk through a bigger issue, because those short office hours book up months in advance, I have paid office hours as well. You can go to feeltheboot.com/advising and see exactly how all of those options work. Now, when you start to actually talk to this other party about these negotiations, trying to come to some sort of agreement, it's important to frame the discussion in an effective way. And the most effective way to frame it is in terms of what they want, not in terms of your own issues. So, for example, when you're talking about selling someone something, don't talk about your own costs. Talk about the value to them and how the price that you may be discussing compares to that value that they're going to experience. Because that other person, they don't care at all what this cost you. Or when you're negotiating for an employee, you want to talk about how much salary you can save. They may be wanting to maximize salary, but again, they may have many other things on the table. Understanding where their value proposition lies, what things really matter to them, allows you to frame the whole discussion around making sure that they get the things that they particularly care about. Before you even sit down, make sure that you've gathered the data that you're going to need. It's always helpful to have hard numbers and real data in your hand when you're conducting negotiations. So for example, if you're talking about valuations, you should have worked out your company's fair market valuation using one or a couple different methodologies, so that if someone comes out with some number that's way out of left field, you can make a reasoned argument about why they're wrong. You should also be, for example, looking at other similar comparable companies and the kind of valuations they're actually receiving in practice, because those are great counterexamples to what your negotiating opponent may be bringing to the table. Because if they're smart, they're also coming with data and marshaled arguments, and you don't want to go to a gunfight with a knife. I think that there's an important philosophy that you need to adopt when you're going into negotiations, and that's you're not going for an everything I can get type of outcome. That makes sense in some abstract way where this one negotiation is the only negotiation you're ever going to have and you want to get as much as you can, but that's almost never the world we're living in. We're not playing in limited games, we're playing in infinite games. We're going to be negotiating with this person many, many times in the future. And of course, this is a small world in the startup ecosystem. People talk to each other. So if you've been a real jerk to one person, that's going to get around and will poison all of the future negotiations you have. So you want to be thinking about this in terms of an outcome that's going to make everyone happy, or at least reasonably content with the result, so that next time you're going out to them, or when they tell someone else about what it's like to work with you, there will be a good report on that experience that makes all of your future negotiations run much more smoothly. Plus, let's say you do get a completely lopsided outcome and they agree to this deeply unfair to them set of terms. Well, that may not work out to be great. Down the road, they might decide to back out of that agreement. Your employee quits to take a different job. The vendor sort of throws up their hands and walks away from the contract. Or they resent you the whole time, so it comes in slow, and if it's billed hourly, maybe over budget, maybe they just sit in a corner and sulk and suck at the thing they're trying to do for you. None of these outcomes you want. You want this person happy and enthusiastic to be delivering the thing that you bought. And that requires that this have been an equitable outcome, and ideally one where both of you feel maybe you got the better deal. Negotiation is an opportunity to exercise creativity. You're talking about how to come to a solution. And it can be very easy when you come out with a position, the other person comes out with a countering position, and suddenly you feel like you're butting heads. Everyone sort of digs in, solidifies their position, and is trying to push. It is human nature. It's a very natural thing to do. Try to remind yourself before you sit down, that's not the direction you want to go. What you want to do when you see an impediment isn't to bang your head against that wall, but to see if there's ways to walk around the wall. Is there a door in that wall? Are there other solutions that you can bring out? And you want to also encourage your negotiating partner to be creative in their brainstorming so that you're collaborating to find a mutually agreeable solution, not just trying to get your win conditions before they get theirs. That can be difficult to keep relaxed because energies and passions can run high, but do be constantly thinking and asking, using that Socratic approach to try to draw out from your negotiating partner other options that you could use to get to a situation that's going to work. So for example, if price turns out to be a hard line for the person you're talking to, can you get payment terms or extra features or more seats? Input on the next set of features they're going to build? What are other things that might compensate you for paying a little bit more? Which is why those first steps of understanding yourself and understanding your negotiating partner are so important, because that's when you get the wealth of information that you'll need to understand where there may be flexibility and creativity and ability to work around issues, and where there's just no option and you're going to have to try to work and live with that particular thing or walk away. And don't forget to check out those books. They're both amazing. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you found it useful and interesting. And if so, do the usual, like, subscribe, ring that bell, sign up for our newsletter, Boot Prints, get on my calendar for one-on-one advising. I love talking to founders. I learned so much from all of the different amazing types of businesses that you're creating, and there's no way I can ever create a video to address every single scenario that you're going to run into. And until next time, ciao.